contact for a 31-yard touchdown. On the defensive side, Memphis QB Brendan Lewis, he's going to get picked off right there. Caden Fordham, he has time and space, returning it 55 yards. I would say to the house, but he's just shy down to the 3-yard line. No pick six there. They'd finish the job, though. Will Wilson punching it in. All the scoring would be done in the first half. Only Wolfpack winning this bowl game 31-7. And some great news for Duke football quarterback Darian Mensah shared the decision on Instagram today, saying, "Let's run it back." He's announcing he's returning to Duke next season. The QB led the Blue Devils to that ACC championship win here in Charlotte, and he had explored the option of the NFL draft. Head coach Manny Diaz sees the mental shift changing since he has come to Durham.
When I got here 2 years ago, guys were leaving Duke to go play their final year somewhere else to try to improve their stock from the NFL. And I think now, bridging that gap of that understanding that if they perform with excellence here at Duke, they can go, they can parlay that into a great NFL career.
And LaMelo Ball returned to the court last night for the first time since December 5th, and he delivered 28 points, 8 3-pointers, 7 of those coming in the first half alone. No secret that the Hornets are a better team when LaMelo is healthy and on the court. He missed 10 of Charlotte's 27 games so far this season. Charles Lee knows his impact.
Our overall team is always boosted anytime he plays. The spirit of the group goes up. When you have that mighty fighter, when you got to go to battle and you see him show up, you're like, oh, dang, we're going to be all right. And so I think the group really rallies around that, and he did a great job defensively of taking on matchups and finishing possessions. And then, like you said, offensively, some of it's, I think, our ability to play great defense, kick the ball ahead, and create some early advantages in the clock. And he did a great job of knocking them down.
And we're going to be talking more ball on Panthers on the Plus.
I was just going to say, girls are going to ball at 9.
Yeah.
So we'll see you then
Panthers,
on the Plus. Have a great night. Nightly News is up next.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Live Weather Impact right here on WCNC Plus. I'm meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees, and we have a lot to talk about, folks. First things first, let's talk about how much rain we accumulated in the last 24 hours. With the rain event, of course, we had yesterday and early this morning, most areas across the Piedmont at least got about a half of an inch to a quarter of an inch. You can see 0.7 there in Charlotte. Parts of the mountains, though, Boone and Hickory got really lucky with over an inch there. Monroe getting right around a half of an inch. And again, you can see those totals were pretty significant, at least in terms of how much rain we have seen as of late, at least a half of an inch for most of the area. Now, feast or famine for areas just north of us over toward the Greensboro area and north, because they, of course, didn't see nearly as much rain and the consistency in which we saw the rain, especially late last night before the main cold front came in. And speaking of late last night, we had a strong cold front come in. There were areas of reported wind damage in the mountains, as well as a few reports of wind damage in parts of Cabarrus County, as well as Mecklenburg County. If you have wind damage of some sort and you want to report that to the National Weather Service, you can do so to them directly, or you can send to our team at WCNC. You can send it to myself, to Brad on Facebook, email, Instagram, whatever, and we can pass those pictures and information along to you. There was a pretty notable line of strong winds and even some kinks in parts of Gaston County near the Dallas area. So especially if you live there, make sure you're, of course, letting us know. And speaking of, again, winds, they were pretty high even outside of the main thunderstorms. We had 51, the highest wind gust there at Charlotte Douglas, 54 in Boone, and upwards of 67 in Jefferson. That's why those areas, especially Ashe and Watauga County, are under a high wind warning through this evening. And that, of course, is because of wind gusts around 50 to 60 miles an hour, but you can see there in Jefferson, it's even higher. These are normally issued not necessarily when we're under a strong storm potential or a severe storm potential. They're normally issued when it's non-thunderstorm winds. So again, once the storms have rolled out, that winds are still expected to be gusty. Now, areas in Avery County, we are also seeing high winds as well. They're under a wind advisory, which of course you can see from Beach and Sugar Mountain. They're taking advantage of the wind and, of course, of the cold weather and making some of their own snow. The reason why, of course, I mentioned that is because Beach Mountain, right on the edge there between Avery and Watauga counties. So here are those wind alerts I just mentioned. Again, that's through tonight. Sustained winds upwards of 30 miles an hour, gusts up to 60, which means that if you're seeing that again in parts of Boone, over toward Jefferson, Chestnut Hill, that means that areas at higher elevations, that is, could be even higher. So if it's 67 in Jefferson, that means 3,500 feet and above. It's certainly possible that you're at 70 miles per hour plus. Now in Charlotte, those winds are not quite as high. Right now we're gusting around 15 to 25 miles an hour. I would still watch out, especially if you had rain last night, for some branches, small limbs that could be down, but the inflatables probably not going to be blowing over as much as we have over the last few days. Earlier today, it was neighbor's yard, if not down the street. Now I think they're probably leaning, but should be standing tall as we head into tomorrow morning, as those winds are going to die down pretty quickly. Here's a wide view here, satellite radar. Things are very, very calm, not just here in the Charlotte area, but across most of the southeast. And we're really not expecting a lot of crazy weather here over the next few days. Probably the only thing of note is that we will see another slight drop in temperatures by early next week. But again, it's not putting us very, very cold. It's not even putting us to really near average for this time of year, which we'll get to that. We got plenty of time to talk about it. Here's a closer view again of satellite and radar. Things pretty calm. Temperatures overnight here in Charlotte, because of the calm conditions and the fact that winds will die down, will get to around 31 degrees. Now up in the mountains, it won't be quite as cool as they could be with this cold air coming in. They're in the upper 20s. And I said this during the regular newscast, and I always think it's interesting because here on Live Weather Impact, we have so much time to kind of explain things, but not as much time during the newscast. So when you have light winds, cold air allows to settle closer to the ground. This is called radiational cooling. And that's because when it's windy and the winds are mixing, temperatures can't cool off as much because the winds are essentially mixing the atmosphere consistently rather than allowing for them to settle. So 31 in Charlotte is indicative of those lighter winds, right? Because the cold air was able to settle closer to the ground. However, it's the opposite impact in the mountains because they're still dealing with gusty winds, which again mixes the air, and they're also still dealing with some clouds. So even though the temperatures are very, very close together, you would normally see a more significant contrast between places in Boone and Charlotte, especially after a big cold front. So again, you look at those numbers and you say, well, 27 is pretty close to 31. It certainly is. It's just that in a normal situation with radiational cooling in the mountains, they would be even chillier. So tomorrow afternoon, tons of sunshine, winds coming in out of the south and west helps pump in some of that warmth. We're at 59 in Charlotte, upper 40s in the mountains, about 5 degrees or so above average. Now this is when things start to get interesting. So tomorrow is going to be a little bit warmer than normal. We're about 10 degrees warmer than normal on Sunday. A brief cold front rolls through, no moisture expected, but another cool down for early next week. However, in the long range forecast, right, we're talking 6 days out, which is Christmas Day. Hopefully that doesn't stress you out. But yes, Christmas Day is 6 days from now. It is the 19th. We have a substantial amount of warmth that's coming, and it's not just us here in the Charlotte area. It's actually across most of the country. Look at the contiguous United States here. So this is not including Alaska and Hawaii. Just remember that. But everybody is expected to be above average. Now, I do want to remind folks that these long range forecasts that come out, this 30%, 50, 70, 90 you see at the top of your screen, that is not how much warmer than normal it's going to be. So let's say Dallas's average high is 50 and so is Charlotte's. This doesn't mean that Dallas is going to be 60 and Charlotte's going to be 55. It is the confidence level of how confident we are that these areas are going to be warmer than normal. So when you see a lighter orange or a lighter blue, you're kind of trending, less confident, right? Things could definitely change. But when you're at 50, 70, 90%, things are not changing. And in fact, here in the Charlotte area, it looks like we're getting warmer and warmer as trends start to continue. So my current forecast, and remember, this will change and adjust as we get closer to the actual holiday, but for Christmas Eve is 43 for a low, 69 for a high, 47 Christmas Day for a low, and 71 for a high. Where does this stand compared to normal? Well, lows about 10 to 15 degrees above average and closer to 20 degrees above average for the high temperatures. So pretty notable for both the low and high temperatures. But I think what's more notable is especially Christmas Day, this could actually put us here in the record books. In fact, if we are able to tie 71 degrees here in Charlotte, it would put us tied with 2021 and 1889 for, I guess technically if you look at these, you're 4 and 5, but they're average, for the fourth warmest Christmas on record. Again, it would be a tie with 2021 and 1889, but that's a lot of warmth. In fact, the warmest it's ever been on Christmas Day, 77 back in 1955. So again, when you look at the comparative to average and the fact that it really is not oftentimes 70 plus, it's actually only happened a total of about 6 times since record keeping began in 1878. So 71 in Charlotte on Christmas is pretty notable. Here's a long range forecast brought to you by Jerry Hunt Supercenter. Again, you can see the slightly warmer day tomorrow, even warmer day on Sunday. There's that small cool down Monday, Tuesday, and then we're soaring all the way up. Just like Santa's going to be soaring through the sky, bringing all the kids some toys on Christmas. Long range forecast again looks very warm, folks. We'll see you later on tonight on WCNC Charlotte.